Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. And I would like to call to order our Middlesex County Council meeting to order for Tuesday, May 25th. I hope that this meeting finds everyone refreshed after a well-deserved long weekend. Given the announcements made last week, let's hope we are on the path to that being one of the last weekends living with restrictions. Sunday marked the start of Paramedic Services Week. Middlesex County is proud to recognize and celebrate this week. It offers us an opportunity to express our gratitude and appreciation to all Middlesex London paramedics and the staff who work with them each and every day with professionalism and compassion to keep us and our communities safe. The theme of the 2021 Paramedic Services Week this year is Paramedic as Educator Citizen Ready. The idea is to educate members of the public on some of the actions they can take before and during an emergency to help paramedics do their job more efficiently and effectively. As was the case last year, and it should not go unrecognized, how our paramedic service has continued to serve while being challenged during COVID. Throughout this pandemic, Middlesex London paramedics and staff have cared for our communities through continuing to provide excellent pre-hospital care when responding to emergency calls, responding to the needs of our community through providing excellent health care through community paramedics, supporting when needed at the COVID assessment centers, and deploying vaccinators at vaccination centers and through the use of mobile teams. On behalf of Middlesex County Council, I want to express to you, Chief Neal, how proud we are of the work that the Middlesex London Paramedic Services team under your leadership provide us each and every day. We have seen a lot of accomplishments, hard work, and advancement, even under the most trying of times during the pandemic. Thank you for all you do, and please pass along to all the members of MLPS a happy Paramedic Services Week. Is there any, yes, applause, virtual applause. Thank you, Councillor David. You were the first hands I saw. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. Is there any business arising from the minutes? You do have the minutes from May 11th, and they have been circulated, and unless there is nothing to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes as presented. Councillor Richards and Councillor Elliott. All opposed? And those are carried. No deputations, but we do have a notice of motion, and it is in front of you from the last meeting. But Councillor Mayhew would like to, so he's going to address council, and I'm sure he's going to speak to this, but he would like to request that his notice of motion be revised as follows. Further to my intention stated in my notice of motion, I wish to include another intersection of concern in Southwest Middlesex on Wednesday evening. Maybe I'll get Councillor Mayhew to speak to all of this.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Thank you very much, and I apologize for any confusion that may have caused. The notice of motion, as it is in the minutes, would remain the same, and that is my intent, to focus on this intersection, and I'll explain that. Following that notice of motion, it was my intent to forward information to our clerk, but she's so efficient, she had that done very quickly, and I had some consultation with other councillors regarding that from Southwest Middlesex. There was concerns from a number of ratepayers, but give me a moment. I think I can steer you through that. Further to my notice of motion on May the 11th meeting, asking for County Council's consideration to initiate a pilot project at the corner of Glendon Drive and Melbourne Road. I sincerely thank Council for this opportunity to bring this concern forward. And with Council's assistance, we may begin perhaps a process of enhancing safety and evaluation. Southwest Middlesex, and this is very brief, folks, I don't want to repeat what I said on the May 11th meeting, has several intersections of controversy which are shared between us and our good neighbor Strathroy-Caradoc. The Glendon Drive and the Melbourne Junction is shared by Mayor Vanderheyden and myself, and is regarding as having, to put it in a classification, the saddest history on that particular intersection. This intersection, as I stated before, is designed and signed correctly, exceeding what is required by MTO standards. These accidents are a result of driver error, driver fatigue, and driver distraction. But to say it's not our fault will not change bad driving habits. It may not reduce tragedy, and it will not prevent the sound of bending metal. I did not want to ask the county engineer or this council for a change of policy, but rather to get council's endorsement to begin a pilot project. I do so because of a number of reasons. It's faster. It's more efficient in determining what works, what does not work, the cost and effectiveness in engaging a new element at this intersection. And my motion indicates that the engineer and the roads will steer the choice of illumination for what is most effective in the evaluation process. It is my hope, and as the warden alluded to, there are other intersections of concern, but I think we have to focus on this particular one first. And Mayor Vanderheyden and I have been very receptive to meeting with engineering and discussing intersections that Joanne has concerns with and intersections that I have concerns with, but I believe that's a discussion for another day. We are focusing on Glendon Drive and the Melbourne Road. As I said, perhaps this may be the beginning of additional conversations with the Middlesex Road Department. Ms. Vanderheyden and I look forward to that. Madam Warden, I thank you for the time you've given to me. I do not think it's necessary to read out that motion. It is before everyone. And I would respectfully ask the warden if you would call a seconder and then allow discussion on this.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Mayhew. And I see Councillor Vanderheyden's hand up, so that I'm assuming as a seconder. Okay. Just making a note there. Okay, open for discussion and comments from council. Councillor Vanderheyden.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden. And just to reiterate what Councillor Mayhew has said, I agree that our roads are engineered properly, that it's not because there's no sight lines. It's absolutely mostly driver error. And you know, that's again, it still hurts. It still hurts when someone gets hurt. People have died there. So if this is one more thing that we can add to our road in order to have a person see the stop sign, I think it's in our best interest to do that. So this is why I seconded the motion, and I hope that we move forward with this and then do look at others when this is a pilot project is done, that we see what works and then what we can do moving forward at other corners.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderheyden. Other comments from council? Councillor Mayhew.
Madam Warden, I respectfully ask for a recorded vote on this, please.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Ropp.
Sorry, can we clarify, is it a recorded or weighted vote?
I requested a recorded vote.
Recorded, so just yays and nays?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, Councillor Ropp.
Thank you. Through the warden. And this would be, I'm not sure, I think Chris is the one to answer this. first of all, I'm in favor of something happening at that corner. But Councillor Mayhew made comment about other intersections in the community. We have two in North Middlesex that Councillor Cornelison is aware of, and Chris is as well. My question on this, the term pilot project concerns me a little bit. In if we make that corner a pilot project, does that mean we cannot do the same thing at other intersections before that 2-year period would be over?
Chris, did you want to jump in at this point?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, I guess, again, we're at the, as staff, we're at the direction of council, of course, with regards to these signs at these locations or any others. But if we're doing a pilot project here, there's a couple of things. So just some challenges with the motion. We need to define, what does that mean? Are we putting them in for 6 months, 4 months, 5 years? How are we monitoring that? How are we evaluating that? So there's some challenge there for pilot project. And are we just going to limit it to these locations? Councillor Robb says, is this going to be isolated to Wardsville and the Melbourne and Glendon Drive intersections? The other challenge is, what kind of signs we're going to use. There's lots of different options for those signs. So of course, it is of course up to council to decide how that's going to be rolled out. Just for council's information, just two very important pieces of information I think are critical to this motion. One that was raised by our insurer and is being investigated by the OPP is the legality of these signs. Stop signs are regulated under the Highway Traffic Act. They're a regulatory sign. So one of the things we're still checking, and I'm waiting to hear back from a legal, not our legal, but external legal and the OPP, is if there is a collision at this intersection, and hopefully there isn't, and I have good news on that front, I'll get back to in 1 second. If there is a collision at this intersection and the signs are not legal because they're non-conforming to what's prescribed in the Highway Traffic Act, we will be exposed, as most of you are familiar, through joint several liability. If there's a lawsuit against the county and the signs are not conforming to the Highway Traffic Act regulations, we could be on the hook for most, if not all, of the cost of anything that people sue us over with regards to these signs. So that's the insurer's question about it. The police's question about it is around enforcement. If they are not legal signs, they cannot lay charges under the Highway Traffic Act for people who do not obey the stop sign. And I don't mean people blowing through the stop sign at speed, but people who roll through stop signs or pull out, failure to yield type situations. Are they able to charge under those situations? So we're just checking on both of those. I don't anticipate either of those to be an insurmountable hurdle, but we are checking on that. The other good news is at this intersection, and I thank Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Vanderheyden for their comments about all the work we have already done at these intersections to keep the sight lines clear, to move those signs out of the way, to improve the stop signs, and to install the rumble strips. I have collision data from the OPP that we have had one collision at this intersection since those rumble strips have been installed, and it was a stop and pull out. It was a failure to yield, a stop and pull out. So I have a challenge, and I'm not sure how we deal with that challenge with a pilot project, which is evaluation. If we're not having run-throughs at this intersection, how do we evaluate the effectiveness of this LED sign? And Councillor Rott makes a good point. There may be other locations within the county where we're having run-through issues where this type of sign may be more effective if they're indeed legal. We don't know. I can get that information, but I don't have it at my fingertips. But it's something certainly from a staff perspective, more than happy to come back with a report. The OPP have actually contacted me. They would be more than happy to come back with a report about where they're seeing challenges in Middlesex County. These are not free of charge. They're not overly expensive, but there is a cost. And I would like us to use our traffic safety dollars effectively and efficiently. But again, this is of course to council to decide what to do here. with regards to where they're going in, how long they're going to stay in, how they're going to be evaluated. But the question here is the notice of motion is how do we deal with that, and what happens if we have other requests across the county. Of course, we're at the will of council to do what they wish. I think I'll leave it there, Kathy.
Thank you, Chris. Did you have follow-up, Councillor Ropp?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you once again through the word. So, Chris, if we did a staff report, how long are we looking at? I mean, and I understand Councillor Mayhew's concerns, and all of us for that matter, but how long would it take to have this report so we can look at this and go forward and do this correctly?
Through the word to Councillor Ropp, again, it would be the direction to staff. So if we wanted to look at simply an LED stop sign type pilot project, that could come back fairly quickly. I would say sometime in June. And during that time, we would come back with the cost and find a supplier and talk about installation and lay out the framework, decide how that affects our minimum maintenance standards, because we have a duty to maintain and patrol these signs. Talk to our partners in Huron County, and as far as I know, regionally are the only municipality who are using LED stop signs in a pilot type project. So speaking to Huron County about that. So to frame out a pilot project and to come back with some kind of perspective on that. From a road safety perspective side, I have been working with the OPP, and I'm told they are ready to come to us and talk to us, likely even at the next council meeting, to give us some overarching evaluation of road safety in the county. Again, it's good news. We are doing very well. We have done some good things here to help reduce collisions over the years in the county. So they are here and prepared to do that. But again, if depends the level of complexity of the report, I certainly don't anticipate it taking longer than either of the council meetings in June. Certainly could quickly get something done for the next meeting, more likely give you something more concrete for a meeting, which I believe is on the 22nd of June without much concern.
Any more follow-up, Councillor Ropp?
No, I would pass it over to the next person. I may have
Okay.
after. If that's
Okay,
all.
sure. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, and through you, the warden. I 100% support doing something at this intersection. It was actually 16 years ago. My father was involved in a very serious accident at this intersection, which dramatically changed all of our lives. But so something has to be done. But I would agree with Councillor Ropp in looking at a more fulsome report on what can be done at other intersections. As you mentioned, Chris, some things might work at this intersection, whereas they might not work at other intersections, and maybe a more fulsome report on what can be done to make our roads in general safer and the options we have available at each intersection. I know here in Temp Center, we've been using the flashing red lights above stop signs. We have 2 locations with a third coming next week with those. And if I'd just like to see that report on what we can do better and maybe best practices from other municipalities and counties on what they're doing as well.
Thanks, Councillor Elliott. Councillor DeVete.
Thank you, Warden. Through you to Council and to Chris. As Chris knows, we have a similar situation in Middlesex Centre. He's nodding. I think all of us have experience with bad intersections, and of course, we all want to have our intersections and our roadways and have our residents and visitors to our communities travel in as safe a way as possible. I don't think any of us would argue that point. I guess my question partly was going to be along the lines of, is the action that we're asking staff to take as in the motion? Because as Chris pointed out, there are questions around parameters here that I think I'm not qualified to make, and I would leave to discretion of staff. So is the pilot this long or that long, or do we do X or Y? So for example, I tried to find information on this kind of lighting in the traffic manual. It was number 5 that has all the stuff on stop signs and all those things. I couldn't find this anywhere. So in my mind, I went, wait a minute, is this new? How does that newness translate into our quote guidebook, which actually then kind of overflows into the liability piece, at least in my understanding. So I was a little confused about that part. The other part I was a little confused about was I'm not sure what the status of the other intersections, but that one intersection I was referring to in our municipality is a pilot to see whether or not the changes that have been made to it are effective or not. To the extent that similar action has been taken in this intersection, if we're changing variables as we go, I'm wondering about how do we understand the efficacy of the A and B and C that we've already are testing and trying out. So that part of it was confusing to me as well. And then as far as the question of liability, we had a situation here in Middlesex Center, and it was asked and answered in the way that if you go ahead and do the signage and mitigation for the safety problem we were having in school areas, then to the extent that that isn't replicated across your municipality, your jurisdiction, i.e., okay, we want it in Kamoka and they don't have an Ilderton school or Delaware school or at the Catholic school. If that is not consistent, then we are opening ourselves up to like exposure, insurance exposure. So that was another concern that I had. I think you've touched on those things. Oh, and then the data on accidents and the difficulty we've had, at least in recent years, in getting information from the OPP. I'd like to understand too, what proportion of the accidents are caused by driver error, or what proportion are caused by poor maintenance to vehicles, or like what have they found, so we can actually address the problems that need to be addressed instead of throwing things at things and hoping that it works, because this is an emotional and a horrible thing to experience and see in the news when we see these things. So those are the concerns that I was struggling with. I think we've like Kelly and Brian, we've touched on them. So I think I sort of fall in the same square as the other people around on the square, within the squares. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeBeat. Any other comments from council? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Warden. So just to speak directly to the motion itself, and then I just have additional comments as well. I was over a year ago at the end of my my term as warden. I brought up this intersection of Glendon and Melbourne Road and saying that we need to do something, and looking for the engineer to bring back a report as to different ideas as to how we can enhance the safety of this intersection. I believe it was after that the rumble strips were put in place. So I'm glad that something has been done. Unfortunately, there has been another accident that has happened there, which I believe is why we're looking at this notice of motion here today. Overall, I like the idea of the LED stop signs. I'm not sure if this is the correct location to start this pilot project. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing as well from some other members of council. But at the end of the day, I would support this because we need to do something. We need to start somewhere, and whether it's this location or somewhere else, we just need to start down the road of looking at different options. And that's where I am right now. I understand that there's some liability issues. There's how is it going to work with the variables of this other pilot project and all those things. But overall, we need to be doing something. And whether we have to start here at this intersection, if this is obviously approved, that's where it would be. But there is a lot of other intersections. And that's where I'll just get into some other generalized comments of, in Adelaide Metcalf. Another one that I get emails about is on Egremont Drive and Hickory. That intersection is also a very bad intersection where there's accidents all the time. And it's one that we don't really talk about too much, but I think at the end of the day, going to Councillor Ropp's, comment of we need to have a report looking at all of our intersections, what we should do, where we should, implement the LED stop signs, where we should implement the enhanced rumble strips, and all those types of things. As well, each intersection is very different. So whether it's somebody not seeing the stop sign and they're running through it, obviously that's where I would say these LED stop signs would make sense. If it's a matter of people have to pull out further because of sight lines, that's something else we need to do. If it's the amount of traffic that goes through. So there's a lot of variables, and I feel that with this, the public obviously is going to be watching this and wondering, what county council is going to be doing. And I think the quicker that we can get a report, no matter what the outcome of this motion is, I think we need to have a motion afterwards to have a report from staff to look at everything. One thing I will mention, and I sent this text to the warden actually on, it was on Sunday, I guess. So my wife and I were driving down Glendon, down Melbourne. We got to the stop sign there, and we had our blinker on to turn left. There was somebody in front of us also at the stop sign, had their blinker on to turn left. We all waited for the traffic to go by, and we proceeded to turn left. And the person in front of us did not turn left. They went straight. So thankfully, there was no collision, but there easily could have been a collision. Would that have been solved anything with 2 LED stop signs? Absolutely not. That is driver error. And thankfully, we stopped in time. We threw our hands up in the air, and hopefully when they went down the road, they would have realized their light was on and they were at fault and we were not. But at the end of the day, a lot of these issues come down to driver error, and I'm just glad that we weren't in an accident there, and I'll be avoiding that intersection for a little bit now. But that's just something I wanted to make note of. And one more thing before I let somebody else speak is I watched, I think it was during the AMO conference, and I believe, Chris, you were watching it as well. There was talking about intersection safety. And one of the things that I really like the idea of, and I know it's very costly, but putting cameras up at intersections. Having the, if we're not able to get the traffic reports, we need to have eyes on the ground. And what better way to do that than having cameras at intersections? So whether they're temporary, whether we can move them around from spot to spot, but having cameras set up at intersections to see what's going on, why is accidents happening, what is kind of happening on the ground there, I think that would really help out. So maybe that's something we would look into at that report that I assume we'll be looking for. So anyways, that's everything.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, going back to Councillor Ropp and then Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you, and I appreciate the conversation we're having here. Make no mistake, I want to support something happening at that intersection to improve it. Make no mistake about that. I do support that. The term pilot project does concern me, that it does hamstring some of the other intersections doing some of the same work at other intersections. I want to be clear of that. And I guess my question would be, would it be considered to be tabling this motion? It's just a question to Councillor Mayhew until June when we get that report and bring it at that time. That would be a question I would have for people making the motion.
Okay, so Councillor Mayhew, I was going to go to you after. Did you want to speak to what Councillor Ropp just said, and then you can add your additional comments?
Thank you, Madam Warden. There was some comments made regarding the notice of motion that I just wanted to clarify and get some understanding on. There was some questions about the element of time that I asked that this be a pilot project for 2 years. It's in the motion. Furthermore, I also made the statement that staff procure and have commissioned a suitable vehicle of notification, a light with light. The staff have a better understanding than any of us on council of what is the best to facilitate the concerns at this intersection. And the notice of motion gives total direction from our engineer to procure a suitable project, to have it studied for a period of 2 years, that it be assessed in visibility, durability, statistical events, and cost effectiveness was in the motion. And those comments that I've just made were questioned, that they should be in the notice of motion when in fact they are. And secondly, I reached out for advice on this notice of motion after I made it, that I would consult with the clerk and get direction. And it was not forthcoming. I have been meeting since December 18th, 2019, regarding a conversation of what can we do to enhance awareness. And I'm fully aware of the accident statistics. I've read some of the police documents on that. Light at an intersection, of course, is there to prevent people from running the stop sign and to seeing the stop sign in advance. But the connotation of light at an intersection as a driver has more meaning than that. You know, caution, exceed caution. You're approaching an intersection. It benefits those traveling in a north to south or south to north direction. But those turning east or west, they have got the visual identity of light. It's a concern. There's an extremely sad history of this intersection. I can remember my father telling me to approach that intersection with caution when I was 16, 17 years old. And that was a long time ago. It has a sad history. It's not because of our engineering, and I think that's been emphatically stated. It does not have to be repeated. But to do nothing, I think is wrong. We have to do everything we possibly can. And if LED lighting is not the requirement, then some other type of stationary lighting, red lighting, an enhanced stop sign, some visual reminder that danger is ahead. The notice of motion gives a timeline. It gives total control to the engineer to select a suitable product, and the parameters of judgment in that 2-year program have got cost, effectiveness, statistical analysis, visibility, durability, cost effectiveness. It's in there. No more. Thank you very much, Madam Warden. Just to clarify those points that were being pulled out and criticized.
Okay. And then, so to Councillor Ropp's question about tabling it until June, would you be in favor of that? Would you be okay with that? Councillor Mayhew?
Yes, Madam Warden, I could live with that being tabled until June, but I will ask again that the roads department, the engineering department, take me up on my offer to have some dialogue prior to that June meeting so that I can get the assistance that I requested and Councillor Vanderheyden requested at the time of our joint meetings. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vanderheyden, you seconded the motion. Would you be okay with tabling this until June?
I would be okay with tabling this till June as long as the report comes forward at that time, and that could also possibly be the time we ask for a more fulsome report, because I don't expect that we can expect our engineer to get a full report in by the next meeting.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think the question of the legality of if that's how he's going, if that's what the engineer is going to go with, the legality of the signs and the liability need to be, I think, presented to council before council makes a decision. That's just my opinion. I will continue.
Yep. If I could, just a quick follow-up. And I would hope that if that is the case, if we find that out, then we quickly look at whether we need to get a stoplight at that corner, like something that's legal. And I know we can't do a roundabout there right now because we have to buy property and all of that sort of thing. So I would put that on the table as well at that point.
Okay. Councillor Warwick, and then yeah.
Thank you. And through the warden, as far as the upcoming report that sounds like we're going to have in June, is that going to be enough time to get the comments from the OPP? I guess my question would be to Chris on this one.
Yeah, through the warden to Councillor Warwick. Yeah, I mean, we're talking right now with, and my thanks, I should have said this earlier, my thanks to the OPP for providing us with the collision data. You all know my frustration with collision data in Middlesex County and across Ontario right now, and the ability for road safety professionals to get that information. And I really appreciate the OPP helping us out with that. So they're working on their end to try and figure out, because this is so new, right? This is not something, and this is sort of, in my apologies to Councillor Mayhew, I don't mean to be putting up a wall here. This is something that is so new, and I want to be extra careful here that I don't put us at risk at the county corporately by doing something, as Councillor DeVitt said. If we do it here and we don't do it somewhere else and there's a collision, they're going to point fingers and say, well, why did you do it here and not there? And we don't have evidence-based reasons to do it here. So that's part of the reason why we're getting more data from the OPP. And I've been working with the OPP to come to us with some information about this intersection and a couple others. We've heard some comments around the table about some other specific intersections, and just a general road safety commentary for us about what things they've seen in their experience across the province, what works, what's not working, their challenges with enforcement. I know several of us went and talked to the province pre-COVID about enhancing enforcement in Middlesex County, because it's a big part of this. Like, we can throw every engineering solution in the universe at this intersection, and we still are not going to be able to have 100% certainty here. We always hear about 4Es or 5Es, but enforcement's there, education is out there, and engineering is part of that. But we all can do our part to do that. And maybe there's an advantage for us to do more to support the OPP with enforcement. Maybe we should be doing more on the education side, with helping drivers in our area understand what's going on. So anyways, that information I'm hoping is going to be forthcoming. We talk to lawyers and insurers. Sometimes things are a little bit slow, but we're hoping to get an answer from, it's not Frank Cowan Company anymore, I apologize, Intact Municipal. They have a new name. Sorry to those folks for not remembering off the top of my head. Getting an answer from them, getting an answer from the OPP, and going forward from there. There's just a quick comment to Councillor Ropp's question about our pilot with the rumble strips. And I know this is important to members of the public who are watching. I want to take a quick opportunity to say we're doing more. We're actually going to go out and do some modifications to the rumble strips that are ahead of the stop ahead sign, smooth those out significantly. So we'll have sort of two different types of rumble strips there. What we still think will be very effective, but will help to lessen the noise that we're seeing coming off of those rumble strips that I know people are concerned about. That pilot is working very well. We talk about things we've done. That's one of the most effective things we've done. The stats they gave us, we had 8 collisions in 2019 at that intersection, a mix of types of collisions. No, one blowing a stop sign, but everything else was deer collisions and stopping and pulling out, failure to yields. They've gone down to 2 in the last 2 years. So we have seen a great improvement there with those rumble strips. And I anticipate when I get the data for 81 and 17, Nairn and Center Road, and for Nairn Road and Ilderton Road, we're going to see a similar type of positive impact on road safety. So we are doing new things. Like, that's new. That's recommended through the Transportation Association of Canada. It's a new type of rumble strip pattern. We're doing that. I don't have information from Transportation Association of Canada or the MTO. As Councillor DeVitt said, it's not in the guidelines. It's not in the standards. These are new things. So I'm all for trying new things, but we'll do it carefully and in a measured manner here. And I agree with Councillor Vanderheyden, maybe traffic signals is the right answer here. We have other tools we can use. So anyways, we'll be back with a report about LED signs, a report from the OPP about safety, which I think is doable in the very short term, and then a more comprehensive report that I think I'll do more as a report of county officers about road safety generally and engineering, and what's new, what we've tried, what works, what doesn't work. So everybody can be educated, because I think that's a big part of what we need to do better in Middlesex County.
Did you follow up, Councillor Warwick?
I would just say that I know the OPP struggles to get that information themselves sometime. Dealing with the Police Services Board and talking to Dean Croker, that it is an ongoing challenge. So it's hard. And we're dealing with 79 constables all over the county of Middlesex. So the enforcement piece is always a bit of a discussion. And I know our own frustration when we see officers on the 401, and we know that there's a push to have 401 enforcement, but it takes our own officers away from our small communities as well. So those are ongoing discussions that we have all the time.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yes, through the warden and to Chris, just making sure, you mentioned the information from the OPP. Is that report going to outline the accidents and the change in the last 2 years with the rumble strips? I'm seeing a head shaking yes.
Yeah, through the warden to Councillor Smith, they're working on the report, so they of course have information from across the county. They can talk about all sorts of different things. They also don't want to just focus on traffic. They want to talk about policing generally. So that's a good opportunity to have them come in and do that. So we're going to let them do all those types of things. I am making them aware of, those things that we're trying, these enhanced rumble strips. How are they working? What's your perspective on those? What do you think as enforcement about how that has worked out? And I'm going to ask them again to identify like issues where they're seeing problems, where maybe we're not seeing problems, right? What's distracted driving, intoxicated driving, speeding, those types of issues. Where are we seeing their enforcement? Like, where are we seeing those types of things happen? And there are other hot spots that we're maybe not focusing strongly enough. You mentioned Hickory Drive and Egremont, perfect one, right? It's a strange configuration of an intersection, and it seems to have these spikes where we see collisions kind of peak at certain times of the year. So are there other places that we're looking at for that? So I don't want to prescribe exactly what they say in the report. Obviously, they're the police. I'll let them say their bit, but they're anxious to come. They'd like to talk to us, and I think it's important that they should be seeing us once a year, really. But it's important that they come and see us on a regular basis to let us know how things are going in Middlesex County, and better for me, let me know what I can do more to help them out. And it's not to say we don't talk all the time, we do, but it's just nice to have that general conversation so we can let everyone know here in the council meeting, and as well as people watching online at home, what's going on and what things are working and what we can do better.
Okay, just to follow up, I guess I should have been more specific. Could you have in a report sooner than later the data of the amount of accidents were happening prior to in the rumble strip areas to what it is now? We've mentioned it verbally, but I think having it written down on a report is the best to share that with anybody that that's looking for that.
Through the warden, absolutely, Councillor Smith, and I'm actually going to have a report just about that, because I think that rumble strip pilot, I was hoping we'd have a post-COVID report, and we're getting close to that, but we're going to have a report to talk about why we put them in, what the difference is, what we've done to help modify them, and how they're working. So that is, I think that we'll probably table that from a staff perspective, as opposed to having the OPP directly report on that.
Okay, one final call for any more comments or questions, discussion points from council. I think it's been a very thorough conversation up to this point. So seeing none, Kathy, just as a procedures clarification, do we need anything? Both the mover and seconder have agreed to table it. Does anything else need to happen from there?
I just need clarification if Councillor Mayhew withdraws his request for a recorded vote, or does he still want that?
Clerk Kathy, I see no need for the recorded vote at this time, but we certainly will consider that in the June meeting. Thank you for asking.
So then that you're good then, Kathy, with that?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. And we will look forward to continuing the discussion in June. No reports, no new business. On to councillor comments.
Or can we take a vote on tabling?
You need a vote on tabling. Sorry. Okay. So can you, and you just use the mover and seconder for that? Okay. All right. So it was moved by Councillor Mayhew and seconded by Councillor Vanderheyden, and to table the motion as presented. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, no reports, no new business. Councillor comments. Any comments from council? Councillor Elliott.
Yes, through you, the warden. I would maybe just put out another reminder of the Middlesex's Leading Ladies event that the Women's Caucus is hosting on June the 10th. We are still accepting nominations for women who are doing excellent things around their community. And so nominations can be sent to the Women's Caucus at womenscaucus@middlesex.ca. And we're accepting nominations until May 31st. And I'll just note we have over 30 nominations so far, so we are getting excellent response for that.
Mhm. Excellent, thank you. Any other comments? I just have a couple, just a reminder to everybody that FCM is happening next week, and that if you are registered, to make sure that you vote for certainly Councillor Elliott. And I don't think that there's going to be a vote for a president, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. But you know, I'm not going to say anything to jinx anything, but certainly things look good for Councillor Vanderhaven. Why am I saying Vanderhaven today? I keep struggling, but anyways, Vanderhaven to become the next president, which will be very exciting, not only for her, but for our county and for the municipality of Strathroy. So just remember to get your vote in for both our representatives. The other thing I wanted to touch on was that as the service provider of paramedic services, we did get some great news over the weekend through some advocacy work that we've been doing to expand vaccines in the region. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Bill to give us an update on that. And then I think Neil will be joining that conversation as well.
Thanks, Warden. We did really have some exciting news. I shared with Council a CTV news story about this exciting news today, and it really started quite a long time ago. I think the Warden will agree we've been at this project for months. Nothing is easy in COVID times, and certainly whenever you're asking for vaccines to help those that are in desperate need of those vaccines and are vulnerable residents that have issues related to transportation and transit, it's not an easy ask. But there was plenty of times in the Warden and I, in our conversations, where I told her to give up. I said, it's not going to happen. I think I told her that at least 3 times, and I was getting a little frustrated with her that she was like a dog with a bone on this one. And but she kept at it, and she went as high. The conversations went as high as right to the Premier's office, and I can tell you the Premier was very supportive of our proposal, and made it happen back down through the Ministry of Health to make sure that our target population. That I think this conversation started with the Warden really when we were volunteering at Mount Bridges, where we said, hey, at some point in time, we need to get out to the major employers in Middlesex and London. At some point in time, we need to get to the folks that aren't able to come into these vaccination clinics. And that's exactly what our proposal was to the province. And Neil and his team, you know, it's Paramedic Week, and we've already acknowledged that, but Neil and his team just kept on saying, we're going to keep at it as long as you guys want to keep at it and keep working towards this goal. And finally, I think it was on Sunday, it might have been on Monday, it might have been Sunday, that we got the word that we're going to get the first in a series of hopefully many doses to help address this challenge here and utilize the resources that Middlesex London Paramedic Services has to get those vaccines out, as opposed to people having to come to those. So it's a very small target group. It's a great pilot. We have the resources to do it, and just kudos to the Warden and to Neil for all their hard work of saying, no, we're not going to give up on this. And Neil, maybe I'll turn it over to you just to give Council an idea of what some of the next steps are, and how you see things rolling out from here.
Thanks, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone, through you, Madam Warden, to Council. So thanks again for the advocacy on this. We're excited. So the next steps for us are receiving confirmation of the vaccine to be shipped to Middlesex London Health Unit for the provision of these mobile vaccines clinics. And we're obviously going to be targeting some of the priority areas that the Warden identified through our submission, was obviously homebound patients that aren't able to get out, obviously large factories, congregate settings, not only in the City of London, but in the county, as well as agricultural settings as well. But certainly those are some of the areas, and certainly we're also looking at, where possible, doing some pop-up clinics to be able to bring the vaccines to the residents and to really the main goal of this, and I know the warden's been a big champion of this, is getting vaccines to the population in Middlesex, London as quickly as possible so we can combat this global pandemic as quickly as possible. So stay tuned. We'll have further updates in the coming week, but we're very excited to be participating in this. Thank you.
And,
Great.
and Warden, just two other quick notes that we don't want to lose sight of. We were very clear in our ask that we didn't want the vaccines we were asking for to be taken from the larger regional allocation. So these are not from that regional allocation. These are new vaccines that we're getting from the province. And we greatly appreciate the Ministry of Health and the Premier's help with this. And the other thing I should mention is Neil said something about them going to the health unit. They're going to the health unit first, but then to be delivered straight to the MLPS for delivery. So the care and control of them from a refrigeration and everything else point of view will be at the health unit, but they are labeled for this special project. So all hands on deck did a great job of pulling this together across third parties in the public sector and provincial and municipal and other services, and the county, of course. So we really appreciate everything that everybody did. And the last thing I'd mention, if I didn't mention already, is this really was a response to what we've been asked for in the Middlesex Economic Resilience Task Force. And the warden had big ears whenever she was listening to all the requests, and she made a list, and I got that list and I said, hey, maybe we can do this. Maybe this is something we can do. But I can tell you that in those meetings, that's something that almost everybody asked for was, and the importance of that has become acutely aware. I've been acutely aware of the importance of that for many of our just-in-time delivery type of large sector, large employers. They recognize the economic development impact it can have when you have to have large groups of employees in a just-in-time delivery world that aren't in the workforce. So we're going to do our best with this initial allotment, and we're going to keep doing our best as we go through. And I think that's it, Warden. I think it's just a great story, both for our economy in this area and also for the power of being able to advocate for a great project.
Yeah, I would definitely, yeah, I mean, you couldn't have summed it up any better, Bill. It definitely was a team effort in getting this to where it is and being able to say that we're actually going to be able to have our paramedics out in community and get vaccines in arms. I do want to say, you know, it's initially the initial dose, it's not a lot, but it is 1,000 doses that will help. So we can't get too ahead of ourselves, and I have every confidence in MLPS in that we'll be successful, and that more doses as availability opens up will come. And again, I want to stress that it's not just a county project. This will serve the whole of the region. And it is not taking away from the great work that's already being done. This is above and beyond. These are doses above and beyond that have already been allocated for our region. So, and thanks to everyone who was involved on the weekend to get to where we were able to make this announcement, because lots of people gave up a couple hours of their long, well-deserved weekend. So, Councillor Vanderheyden, I saw your hand up.
Just a quick thank you to the warden and to Chief and to Bill and everyone that got on board to do this, because I think it's essential for our area, and I'm really pleased that this happened. I was very excited when I saw the note come through, and this is just another piece to the puzzle of us getting over this COVID in our region, and I really appreciate the work that you've done on this. Just a quick question. So I know you don't know all the details yet, like the locations and the schedule and who and how you're going to connect with the municipalities to see, you know, which businesses are really looking forward to having this happen. How is that all going to roll out? Do you have something in a nutshell to share with us, or is that still being worked on?
Bill can answer that, but in a nutshell, I think that is coming out in the coming days. But Bill?
Yeah, we gave a proposal that identified some large businesses in the area that would benefit from it in the region. And so we gave that proposal to the Premier's office. We're going to try to stick to that to the best we can. That's part of that was part of our advocacy work, was making sure they knew what we were going to do with the vaccines, obviously. And we're also really focused in on our vulnerable residents, where there is another list as well of vulnerable residents that we've been provided that have those transportation and transit issues. So that's what we're going to focus on first. And then I think the warden's right. I think this is the first, I'm hoping this is the first of many. And then we'll keep working with our partners to understand after we get through that initial list we provided to the province. I know that the Premier himself is I know this for a fact, that the Premier himself is extremely supportive of what we're trying to do here, and has been talking about this type of methodology for delivering vaccines for a while, talking about our paramedic bus publicly for a while, talking about the role of paramedics in getting to the places between places and to large employers. And so I'm very confident that the Premier is going to see great results from this first project, and that it'll keep coming. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Follow up, Joanne.
Just a quick follow up. And while we're on Paramedic Week and we've got the chief sitting there watching us and listening, I just want to say thank you to Chief Roberts for all the work that you and your group do. I know that Chief Roberts is very involved in all kinds of organizations, including the Animal Health Task Force. And I sit on that as well. And I hear him in a very professional way helping move paramedic services along. And I think we should really acknowledge the good work that the chief does. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other councillor comments before I move on? Okay, bylaws, Kathy.
We just have one bylaw today, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Middlesex for May 25th, 2021.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for the first and second reading, please? Councillor Mayhew and a seconder, Councillor Brennan. All opposed? That's carried. And for the third and final reading, a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Smith. All opposed? And that is carried. We do have, we're moving into the committee of whole, we do have a delegation, which is to start at 2, which is just 2 minutes away. So I think before moving on into correspondence, I think maybe we'll just wait until 2 o'clock. That's probably the easiest thing. So if if you wanted to run and get a drink, you've got 2 minutes to do so.
Chris, I'm just going to let the group in, okay? Yep. Casey, Fred, and everybody else that just joined us, we're just taking a brief break, but we'll start right around 2 o'clock, just so you know. Did you hear me, Fred? Do you want to give me a thumbs up? Maybe you didn't hear me. Bill, you better check his audio.
Yeah, there's not even an option to ask to unmute, so I'm not sure if they joined or not.
I'm just thinking we should, Fred, can you hear me? Yeah, I wonder, Kara, do you have his phone number? Wonder if you could give him a call and just see whether we're having audio trouble or not. Casey, I assume you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, all right, good. And who's on 416?
That Mr. Mayor, it's Kim Mullen. I'm
Oh, yeah,
counsel
Kim.
for
Yeah.
Trev Keller
I
and
got-
Mr. Cahill. Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to connect to the Zoom meeting for some reason, so I'm on the phone.
Okay,
And I'll
no
go back
problem.
on mute. So it's my turn.
We're having trouble. I don't know if Fred can hear us. I don't know if Mr. Cahill can hear us. So that's what my concern is at the moment. I'm assuming he's planning on saying something at the meeting.
He is, and he may be having the same problem that I was having and not being able to. At first I could connect, but I couldn't hear anything, and then I wasn't able to connect at all. So he might be having the same problem.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
I'll try giving Fred a call here. You got his number.
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
Okay, cool. Thanks. It's interesting because he's unmuted. Bailey, I'm also going to try putting him in the waiting room and bringing him back out just as a reset. Sorry, Warden. I don't know if you heard all that, but I was.
No, I've been able to follow that. I've been
Okay,
able to follow
yeah.
it. This will be riveting to anybody watching on YouTube. Us trying to all
Technical
figure out the technical
difficulties.
difficulties, but no,
Uh-huh.
appreciate the time that's being put into this to make sure that Mr. Cahill can hear us and have opportunity to speak. So
As a backup plan, Warden, then there's also the opportunity for him to call in the way
Yeah.
Kim did,
mhm.
which we might have to switch to. But it might
Okay,
take it.
can you hear us now?
Yes,
Oh,
we can. Say something, Fred. It's choppy, isn't it?
mhm.
So Bailey, we might have to get him on the phone because it is really choppy.
How are you today, Bill?
Thank you.
Chris, maybe can we get him to call into the line?
Yeah, Fred, I'm going to give you a call right back, and I will give you a number to call in and a passcode. Just give me a minute.
You want to talk again? Okay, they'll call you.
Yeah, Chris will call you. Just hang on 1 second.
Licorice, anyone?
It's like being at the movie. We're probably another minute or two away, Warden.
Yep, no worries.
This will give Brian a chance to tell us about him watching the Leaf game last night. play again tonight, right, Brian?
Yep.
All right.
Friend of mine who's a Habs fan that maybe they'll put in the backup goalie for the Leafs tonight. Give him a chance.
I think we have the backup goalie already. He's doing pretty well.
All right, I gave Fred and company the info. They're going to give it a try. It's a lot of numbers to write down, so hopefully this works.
Mm-hmm. I wondered if we shut their video off, whether we'd be able to hear them through there, but it was so choppy, Bailey, I don't think it would have worked. I just shut them down there for a second. If you're watching at home, just fast forward to 2:10 in the video. Okay, there we go.
How we doing, gang?
Oh, you sound
There
just
he
like you're
is.
next door, Fred.
Oh, you guys have been so patient. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And you can hear us, no problem, Fred?
Yeah,
Okay,
doing
good.
well.
Okay. Well, that is good. So we've got all three that want to make presentations. So I think I've got all counselors back. So we will resume our committee of the whole and get going. And I appreciate everyone's patience on the line, everybody watching on YouTube. And but we wanted to make sure that those that had asked for a delegation were able to hear and present. So moving on. So we do have some presenters this afternoon, and the first one up is Kim Mullen, and I'd like to welcome you, Kim, to Middlesex County, and I will turn it over to you for your comments.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for not being on video. I even put on a jacket today for this, but unfortunately the technological gods are not working with me today. But thank you, Warden and members of council. I am here today as the representatives of Trevor Keller and Gail and Fred Cahill and Margot and Chris Meyer. Fred Cahill is going to make his own presentation, but I just wanted to say a few words to County Council on behalf of all three of my clients, or my groups of clients. All of my clients live in the vicinity of the Sydenham Ridge facility. Mr. Keller is the closest. His bedroom window is 300 meters away from this facility. The Myers live 550 meters away, and the Cahills live 1.6 kilometers away. And all of them have been negatively impacted by the activities of Sydenham Ridge. They have all participated in this process in an attempt to get first the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe and now Middlesex County to hear and respond to their concerns. And my client's position is that County Council should show leadership on this issue and refuse to approve the official plan amendment that was adopted by the Township. The detailed basis for that position is set out in my letter to Mr. Vanderwerf, which I believe is in your package. It's a letter dated April 29th, 2021. It's at the beginning of the tab with the opposition letters attached to Mr. Vanderwerf's staff report. And in summary, the reasons why we are asking County Council to refuse to approve the official plan amendment are first, that it's not consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement relating to non-agricultural uses in agricultural areas. And in particular, the applicant hasn't demonstrated that there's a need for the use in this location and that there isn't another alternative location for the use that wouldn't be in an agricultural area. It's also inconsistent with the PPS policies relating to the protection of significant woodlands and development near flooding hazards. And it also fails to conform with the county's official plan policy, which in our submission requires an official plan amendment for non-agricultural development in agricultural areas. But most importantly, my client's biggest concern with the official plan amendment and the development that it would permit is with compatibility between this use and the surrounding rural area, largely because of noise and as well because of traffic. Just to give you a bit of background, Sydenham Ridge started operating in this location around 2015. At that time, the use was not permitted by the zoning. There were immediately noise problems that my clients experienced, and the operators of Sydenham Ridge promised to address those concerns, but in reality, they failed to do so. And the township also failed to do anything about the noise or the fact that this use was being carried on illegally. My clients' enjoyment of their properties was affected and will continue to be affected. The Cahills, who are the ones who live the furthest, a 1.5 kilometers away from this site, could hear the noise from events at their property. Mr. Keller, who is the closest, was very, very negatively affected and has had to take a number of steps to try to deal with the noise. He's gone to sleep at a motel when events take place at Sydenham Ridge. He's worn earplugs to bed. He's had to replace all of the windows in his house. And none of those measures has been enough to solve the noise problem. The township's proposed solution to this problem was to approve the official plan amendment that Sydenham Ridge applied for and enact a zoning bylaw amendment and rely on holding provisions and the site plan approval process to deal with the issues. Mr. Vanderwerf's report suggests the same approach, authorize the land use, and hope that through the holding process and the site plan process, the problems can be resolved. But my client's position is that this is not adequate. And instead, this use shouldn't be permitted unless the applicant can demonstrate that the use can be carried on without negative impacts on the surrounding properties. And I submit to you that the applicant hasn't done that and can't do that. The applicant has submitted some noise studies that set out measures to be taken to try to minimize noise from inside the farm wedding venue, but those studies don't contain any measures to address noise from outdoor activities, which is significant sources of noise. In addition, Mr. Keller retained a noise consultant, and his noise consultant has provided a report that was before the township, and I believe is also before you, that critiques the applicant's noise study, and in particular says that the background sound levels that the applicant's consultant used were not appropriate. And importantly, there's been no study whatsoever of traffic impacts from this use, either in terms of impact on the road network or safety and parking, or in terms of the noise that the traffic will generate. And this is despite the fact that we're talking about a facility that can and has hosted events of up to 250 people, which generate a significant amount of traffic and traffic noise. It's my client's position that leaving all of these issues to be addressed through the lifting of holding provisions or through a site plan approval process is not good land use planning. And we disagree respectfully with Mr. Vanderwerf's position that the principle of the land use at this location is acceptable. I'd submit to you that a land use that has such significant negative impacts on the surrounding properties cannot be acceptable. And those impacts have to be mitigated and minimized before the use is permitted, not after. My clients will have no ability and no right to participate in the process relating to the lifting of a holding provision or site plan approval. That's a process that's entirely between Sydenham Ridge and the township. And my clients therefore will have to rely on the township to protect their interests, but they are understandably skeptical that the township will do so given the history here. And therefore, on behalf of my clients, I am urging County Council to reject the staff recommendation and to refuse to approve this official plan amendment. Alternatively, if council wants to approve the amendment or doesn't want to reject the amendment out of hand, then I would ask you to defer consideration of it until three things take place. The first is that the applicant submits a traffic impact assessment and an updated noise impact assessment. The second is that both of those assessments are peer reviewed by a qualified third party. And the third is that only if the peer reviewer is satisfied that there will be no negative impacts that can't be mitigated should the official plan amendment be approved. I'd like to thank you, Warden and members of council, for your time today. Subject to any questions, that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ms. Mullen. I think we'll wait for comments after all three presenters and the report, but I imagine you're staying on, so that's good. The next one to present is Fred Cahill from the Texas Longhorn Guest Ranch. And just like Ms. Mullen, we've got Fred on the phone. You can go ahead, Fred.
Yes. Thank you very much for letting us sit in on this.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Sorry, Fred.
Sure.
If I think on your end you might
in the waiting room.
I'll
put his other one in the waiting room, and then that will help, Warden.
Okay, because I was going to say I think you need to mute something on your end, but that should help.
Hello?
Hopefully.
Go ahead. Try it again, Fred.
Okay, go ahead, Fred. You're just going to be on there.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Much better. Thanks.
Good. Just want to thank members of County Council for listening to our lawyer. And I was going to add to all this, but I believe she's covered all the details, and I don't know if I can add much more. We've been going through it for a long time. I think it's been 2017, and as of September 2019, the noise hasn't been mitigated. We were promised that it was going to get fixed, and we went through 3 seasons where it has not been fixed. And I just don't I don't know how to go about saying this, but I'm not saying I don't believe it can be fixed through site plan controls or noise bylaw, but I think it's just too big a risk to assume that it will be addressed by that. And if we decide maybe deferring it until the noise is fixed. I really believe we need to get the noise issue fixed before the official plan amendment. I'll leave it at that, and I thank you very much for your time. If you have any other questions, Trevor and I are here. Appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. The next one to speak is planner from Zelenka Priamo. And Casey, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so I will just hand it over to you, Casey. I don't want to mess it up.
Quite all right. Good afternoon, members of council. My name is Casey Kolchicki. I am a senior planner with Zelenka Priamo Limited, and I'm representing Sydenham Ridge Estates on the official plan amendment that's before you. I'll keep my comments brief. I've reviewed Dirk's report, and we are in agreement with its recommendation to approve the official plan. We've worked closely with Dirk and township staff over the last year and a half, 2 years, when we initiated the zoning bylaw and official plan amendment process. On behalf of Sydenham, we have worked with staff to address the ongoing concerns around noise. With regards to traffic, all I can speak to is staff weren't concerned about traffic impacts from the use, and a traffic impact assessment was not required as part of the applications. The efforts to address the noise concerns is where the energy was most spent. Sydenham Ridge has undertaken several noise studies on their property, have implemented a list of changes to the venue, to the sound system. I believe the list of those was included in the package in front of council today. most recently, we had a sound study conducted last fall in September, and the findings from our acoustical engineer was that the noise emitted from the venue was barely audible above background noise at the property line. We took that study, submitted it with some revised materials to staff. They have acknowledged that there may be some need for some additional peer review and exploration through the site plan approval process. We are in agreement with that approach. We think that the findings of the noise studies done to date are acceptable and can allow the official plan amendment to proceed to the site plan approval stage at this point. We are also aware that there is an appeal currently in place against the zoning bylaw amendment, and you know, there's going to have to be an LPAT hearing to deal with that, and we are expecting that if County Council approves the official plan amendment here today, that they will both be appealed and heard at the same time. So there is another process that still has to be dealt with regards to these applications at the provincial level. So you know, the neighbors will still be able to have their concerns heard at another level as we continue to work through to mitigate the ongoing noise concerns. I'm going to be on hand for the duration of the meeting if anyone has any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Casey. At this stage, I will then turn it over to Dirk to walk us through his report.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So of course, my report is in the package, and I won't go through every word, but I'll go through, if you bear with me, some of the highlights. And partly just to have context to the discussion that of course just occurred. But I guess I would start by just saying Sydenham Ridge has applied to establish a special agricultural policy area. And there's a few other things that are going on, but the greatest context or the primary goal is to establish a farm wedding venue on the property. As was just noted, the proposal is also subject to a zoning bylaw amendment, and that is under appeal. And if County Council was to approve this official plan amendment, there would be a site plan application and then municipal bylaws. My report goes through this matter as on behalf of the County Council, the approval authority, the local reports, a number of other attachments, the material in opposition, the applicant's plan reports. We did include a little bit more than we typically do on these, just for your context, of course. In terms of my planning analysis, you know, the provincial policy statement does provide that high-level direction on matters of provincial interest. And of course, it seeks to protect prime agricultural areas. It also supports opportunities for additional economic activities in prime agricultural areas, and it acknowledges that those objectives can at times compete with each other. There are specific uses that are permitted within a prime agricultural area. In the context of Middlesex County, a farm wedding venue doesn't fit under any of those three permitted uses. So then we have to look at policy 2361B of the provincial policy statement, which allows municipalities an additional opportunity to consider limited non-residential and non-agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas, subject to mitigation to the extent feasible and criteria. County's official plan, the lands are within the agricultural area designation, and non-agricultural activities are scrutinized. The county doesn't address a farm wedding event proposal, and instead, as I say in my report, I do believe those atypical proposals should be addressed through the local official plan amendment process, which is what's happening in this case. And the Ali Metcalf official plan, it takes sort of a similar approach to the issue. So in terms of my commentary or analysis, you know, agriculture is the predominant land use in the county, and it's an important component of our economy and culture. And the protection of agriculture and agricultural land, therefore, are major policy directions of the county's official plan and the other documents. And those non-agricultural activities should be closely scrutinized. And I do think that an amendment to the local official plan approved by County Council or not is the appropriate manner for a proposal such as this to be considered. In my review, I am satisfied that the PPS criteria, limited non-ag use, non-specialty crop area, MDS, justified need, alternative locations, impact mitigation, either have been met or can be met through the subsequent local approvals. In terms of natural heritage and hazard policies of the planning documents, the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority were involved in the local process and are satisfied subject to final flood proofing, etc. And then this is we've had more than one report on farm waiting venues. And so I've said this to council before. The planning policies do generally direct non-ag uses to settlement areas. There are some planning considerations that I'm of the opinion that are unique to farm wedding venues. A location on a farm in a rural setting is difficult to achieve in an urban setting. The quantification of need, isn't a straight numeric exercise like we would do for residential land development, but there certainly is an apparent farm wedding trend, both in Middlesex County and across the province. We did receive, and you heard today, comments in opposition to amendment number 13. And we've also had those for other wedding venues, and they really relate, in my opinion, primarily to those operational matters of hours of operation, guests, number of events, trespass, traffic. And in this case, I think the paramount concern relates to noise. Those matters are difficult to address strictly by the land use planning tools, and therefore it is recommended that municipalities use bylaws, and there's a few of them, such as noise and licensing, to address those operational matters in addition to a zoning or official plan, zoning, and site plan. So from the perspective of my advice to you as the County Council's the approval authority role, I am of the opinion of the principle that this land use at this location is acceptable, and it is sufficient for the county to rely on the township to establish and enforce those bylaws locally to address those operational matters. And I understand that Adelaide Metcalfe also are. And as already noted, site plan is required and the township should be satisfied. And I do believe through the use of a peer review consultant that noise mitigation can occur through that. So in the end, I am therefore recommending approval of amendment number 13, and then the report hits at a high level the financial implications and alignment with council's strategic focus, in my opinion. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dirk. I'm going to open it up to comment and question to everyone. And just a reminder that all the presenters are still on the call with us. So if anybody's looking for any clarification from their end, that can happen as well. Questions, comments? Councillor Warwick.
Thank you. And through the word and to, I guess I have some comments, but I have some questions that maybe Dirk can help me with. I just want to clarify, I have no problem with rural tourism and things that propose rural tourism, as long as it doesn't disturb the reasonable expectation of rural life. If rural would be a quiet setting, daytime activities, and not so much going on at night. So this is getting to be my concern. This facility, like I looked through all the reports, and it seems that it was given permission for occasional events in 2016, and the use has changed. So I just want to clarify, is the current use for wedding venues non-compliant with what they've been allowed to have at this point in time? Maybe Dirk, you can help me with that.
Through the warden, yeah, there is some history to this site and how the use was established. But at this point, I think it is safe to say that it doesn't comply with zoning, and the pro zoning does not conform with the local official plan. And so hence they didn't have to initiate the planning approvals. There also is not a site plan in place today that there would need to be for a use such as this.
And then to follow up, like a site plan that's recommended, I see that there's, talking about noise studies and traffic studies, and I just don't know how through our current lockdown, there would be suitable noise studies, traffic studies, it's a real picture of what's happening. I don't know how how we pass that. It's nobody's fault. It's just that the normal activities that happened in 2017 or 2018 aren't measurable in 2020 until we have or 2021, because that's where we're at. It just seems like 2020 just never ended. But I just don't know how we measure that, and I don't know. You know, I see that Ms. Mullins referred like wants a deferral with the updated noise and traffic studies, and I could understand why she wants that, because there's no normal right now. The other question I have is like, how can we feel confident that the site plans that Adelaide Metcalf are going to be put into place? I know our position as county council is to approve the zoning, but it seems to me, and I could be totally wrong, a little backwards that we're looking at things that aren't even settled yet. Like if one of the recommendations was permanent washrooms, which I find it hard to believe that that conservation authority is going to have permanent washrooms for 200 people on environmentally sensitive land, but that's another whole roadblock. But you know, that's a lot of expense for this venue to go ahead and put in, to be told by the local municipality that they're not allowed to have it anymore because they can't fulfill those site plans. So I just feel there's so many red flags here. And I looked at what Sydenham Ridge does. And again, I support rural tourism, and I see a huge wide range of uses that they've been using before that have no impact on neighboring properties. So I think the focus could be on the things that are compatible, and in the meantime, settle with Adelaide Metcalf what the outstanding issues are. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Warwick. Any other comments, questions from council? Councillor Vanderheyden.
I had some similar thoughts to Councillor Warwick. There's so many pieces here, and I live out in the country, so I know how sound carries. And when what somebody said that, you know, the noise level didn't go past the property line, well, I'm sorry, that to me just doesn't make any sense, because the noise doesn't know where the property line is. So that to me just doesn't make any sense that's where it's actually going to stop. I wonder if the zoning can wait until, like, there's a zoning appeal on right now. So is there any way that we can have this OP wait until that zoning appeal happens? Again, things seem to be going over top of each other. And if somebody is a neighbor and they have to go to a hotel on weekends because they can't sleep because of the noise, that is problematic in my opinion.
Dirk, did you want to speak, or can you speak to the process question that Councillor Vanderheyden had?
Yes, if I may, through the warden. The zoning that was approved at the same time that the official plan amendment was adopted was appealed and is before the LPAT. Therefore, the LPAT certainly do not like to have the same matter litigated multiple times, so they won't proceed with an LPAT hearing on the zoning bylaw until all potential appeals are before them. So they would want the official plan to be dealt with, the zoning, and perhaps the site plan. So they would want a decision on one way or the other on all of those matters, so they can all be dealt with at the LPAT at the same time.
Do you have any follow-up from that, Councillor Vanderheyden?
No, I'll just wait to hear what everybody else has to say. I'm not comfortable with this one, and not because I don't think it's a good venue. I think I've been to the venue during the day for an event once, and it was actually quite nice. But again, during the day is different, and having 250 guests with all those cars going in front of your house, that they're going there, they're coming back in the middle of the night. I can see where that would be an issue. So how do we mitigate the issues? I just need to know how those mitigations can be put in place.
Councillor Warwick again, and
sorry, I should have asked you again through the warden and to Dirk. The noise study, again, I should have looked at my notes better. When I looked at it, the report said it was done for the noise inside the building. So, but when you have 200 wedding guests that are going back and forth between buildings and between washrooms that are outside, again, that noise study isn't really a noise study, is it? Like, I mean, it's only a portion of it. So I don't know, maybe you could tell me how a noise study like this is done.
through the word, and that's where I would be getting in over my head, as I'm not an acoustical engineer. I've read the reports. I've been on the meetings, local council meetings, where it was sort of discussed back and forth, but I would have to rely on the acoustical experts on how you deal with those noise, the different noise receptors, I guess, or different sources of noise. The only other thing I would add is it's not unusual, typically and ideally, the analysis and the applications would come forward before a use is established on the lands. And so if they were doing a noise report, let's say maybe for a residential subdivision, near a railway or something like that, they'd use theoretical, they use models to take the noise and how it might impact people, et cetera. So, there are, I think, ways that engineers, acoustical engineers, can model these things and examine them, even without, events occurring right now.
Councillor Warwick, when you first spoke, did you ask a question, and I might be hanging out there and I don't know, you asked, I think, about site plan and how we can be satisfied that, or who's going to follow up? Was that your question?
I think that, yes, that was part of the question, is the fact that here we are at County Council saying, okay, well, this can go ahead, this can go ahead, but how do we really know at the end of the day it is following the site plan approval? Like, how do we feel satisfied with that?
So again, I might look to Dirk for confirmation of that process.
Well, in a case like this, where it's not along a county road, the site plan would be a completely township process. There would not be any requirement and a typical site plan for county council's review, or frankly input on a site plan.
Okay. Did you have any follow-up from that yet, Councillor Warwick?
Yeah, just through my own ignorance, because I was just going to ask Dirk, is it not common that the site plan would already be in place before something came to upper tier by the lower tier, or do they go back and forth like this commonly?
Through the word, it depends, but I would say that the more typical example would be that the site plan is not finalized or is not done at the time of an official plan amendment. I think it would not be unusual for sort of the general principles of land use to be considered, and then if that's approved, then you get into the more detailed site characteristics, etc. But there are some cases where a site plan is advanced sort of more in parallel with an application.
Okay. I think I saw Councillor Smith's hand up, and then Councillor Ropp.
Yes, thank you, through the warden. Just to give some, I guess, some background on this file, and kind of answer some of just a couple of the questions that were raised by Councillor Warwick as well. So this, with the change of use, so that was discussed at the council meeting in Adelaide Metcalfe as to whether or not it's been legally, it's been a legal use or not over the number of years. So the building itself that's used for events, there was a change of use permit for that building, but that was not in conformity to the actual zoning bylaw, which is why, one of the reasons why we're here today. The other reason why we're here today as well is because in 2019, the property owner was looking for a signature for the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario to have a permanent liquor license on site instead of having their the people renting the venue having special occasions permits. And I would say without that that ask from our staff to have that signature on that page, we probably wouldn't be here today, because everything has kind of been flown under the radar as far as bringing applications to Adelaide Metcalfe Township. So with that being said, on my council for Adelaide Metcalfe, I've been on council since 2010. This is the first time in 2019 when any application came forward to council for any decision. And if anybody took the time to watch my Adelaide Metcalfe council meeting from a while ago, and we looked at this file, this application, I did have, I talked for quite a while just about how it's frustrating on my end as a council member and as other council members, is that we didn't actually really have a decision-making process, in my opinion, for this, because as you heard, the venue has been in operation since 2015 or 2016. and it has never actually came to council until 2019 and actually formally in this past year to make any decisions or not. The one benefit for that, though, is that it is on the ground. We know what is happening. We know that there is noise issues. We know that there has to be some changes. So the one benefit for that in comparison, we did see another application like this from Middlesex Center where they're not on the ground. We don't know if there's going to be any noise issues. But in this case, we know that there's noise issues. We know that there's traffic issues. We know all these things. So the benefit for Adelaide Metcalfe is that when we go through the site plan process, we know what to ask for, and we can hopefully get these issues resolved. And that's really the hope through that site plan process and through the bylaws, if this is approved at County Council. One concern that I do have is that in Adelaide Metcalfe, our council, we aren't sure exactly what route we're going to be going down, if it's a noise bylaw or a noise and nuisance bylaw, or going down a licensing bylaw for, I know that Dirk likes to use the words farm wedding venue. I don't like that term. I like the term rural events venue, because it's not just weddings that happen here, and it's not technically a farm. So for that, we aren't sure which one will be going down, if we'll do that licensing or we'll do the noise and nuisance bylaw. I would like to see our council use the licensing bylaw, and the reason for that is because if I'm one of the neighbors, I too wouldn't want to have events happening every single day of the week. And with this bylaw, with the official plan amendment and with the zoning bylaw amendment, it would allow for those events to happen 7 days a week. Events already happening on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And I'm sure if you live next door or down the road, you too probably wouldn't want to have that many cars driving down, doors opening, closing in the middle of the night to leave and all those things. So that's one thing that I'm hoping my council will be looking towards, is a licensing bylaw, because then we can limit the amount of events that happen throughout the week or weekend or throughout the year. So then the neighbors, if approved, do not have to deal with that noise carrying over. As well, there was I think it was Councillor Vanderheyden made the comment about noise, or maybe it was Councillor Warwick, and how it's hard to compare. And that was one of our council members, Councillor Clark, and Adelaide Metcalfe made that comment as well. It's that it's hard to compare noise in 2020 to 2018 or 2019, because the events, you could only have 50 people there. So there's less cars, less traffic, and also that there was only really looking at the noise coming from the venue itself and not the entire property during different times. So there's a lot of things that still need to be looked at, and I've been told and reassured that if approved, it will be all dealt with through the site plan process, and then furthermore in the bylaws or the licensing bylaw. So at the end of the day, I will say this again. I feel that our Adelaide Metcalfe Council did not really have a choice in this matter, because staff took it upon themselves to approve the change of use permit. We never seen an application for any planning permits until 2019, and it didn't come to our council until 2020. And I apologize that it's now came here, and it is a bit of a mess and a lot of history, but it is what it is, and we're trying to make it right. So this one and a bunch of other ones in the township. So that's all I have right now, but I'm sure if there's any other questions, I can answer them from an Adelaide Metcalfe perspective.
Thank you for that, Curtis. Councillor Ropp.
Thank you. Through the warden, actually, Curtis answered some of my questions, because we're here today to talk strictly about the zoning, correct, Dirk? I mean, we're doing the zoning amendment for the official plan amendment. But I'm with you. The noise is a big issue. Obviously, the noise is the biggest issue for the neighbors. Councillor Warwick and I are much on the same path on what we're thinking here. But I agree, you're going to have to put in a licensing bylaw or something to actually put a control on that. Because I have a question on the site plan and doing the sound studies, whether that will be enough to mitigate the noise issues or not. And I think only licensing, that's just a comments on it that I'm adding to it.
Okay, so no question, just a comment, Councillor
Yeah.
Rob.
Just more of a comment, because the questions have been asked, I think, pretty much that I was thinking. Thank
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see Casey's got his hand up. Maybe I'll go to him and then I'll circle back to Councillor Warwick and then Councillor Vanderheyden.
Thank you, Warden. Just to kind of expand on some of the comments that I've heard, just with regards to the noise study that occurred in 2020, and I recognize that events in 2020 were scaled back. That supplementary noise assessment was done in conjunction with the DJ. We had a DJ come out to the site, plug into the sound system, crank it up as it would be, turned up for a regular event. Our acoustical engineer identified the venue as the most offensive noise source of the operation, which is why we zeroed in on the sound system of the main event hall. So while the number of people in attendance at this event it was a mock event, the noise emissions were comparable to the previous noise study that was conducted a year or two prior during an actual full-fledged wedding event. So the noise levels being emitted from the venue were comparable, and then the noise mitigation measures that Sydenham had been put in place when the noise levels were measured at the property line. Not saying, and I maybe my initial comments were taken out of context. I'm not saying that obviously noise stops at the property line, but we were measuring at the property line what the noise levels were coming across the line at. And at that point, our acoustical engineer determined that they were at or below the background noise level. So that's what the supplemental 2020 noise study focused on, was the sound system of itself, because it was the most offensive emission coming from the venue. And then with regards to the traffic, we've met with staff, multiple times through the ZBA OPA process, and all I can say is that township staff nor county staff ever identified traffic as being a concern. So while site plan can certainly, we can look at the traffic impacts, staff to this point appeared to be satisfied that the traffic is not a concern for the operation of this venue, and the focus has been solely on the noise. So I just wanted to kind of offer that clarification. And then just with regards to the site plan, we have undertaken the site plan process. With the appeal against the zoning bylaw, we have kind of just waited to see how that plays out before we, Sydenham has, invested quite a bit financially in this process, and continuing with the site plan while the appeals are kind of still to be heard. There is some reservation, but we are working with structural engineers and architectural designers to bring a site plan application forward to municipal staff in the future. And we're just hoping that we could get some clarity around the OPA and the ZBA before we invest too heavily in that process.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Warwick.
Yes, thank you. And through the warden. And Casey, I agree. I mean, these people are putting a fair amount of investment in this to become a wedding venue, and waiting at the last minute to find out that you're not allowed to be a wedding venue would be quite a hit, I would think. And again, I guess this question is now to Curtis. Are there wedding venues, knowing that they're non-compliant, that was the impression I got, are they continuing to have wedding venues this summer if lockdown is allowing them, or is that a question that you might not have any knowledge of?
I believe there has been events going on, and the only reason I know that is because, and I got the warden and also the clerk and CIO from Southwest Middlesex telling me to get a marriage license for somebody that needed to quickly change the date. And I got the picture, and the event seemed to be at that location. So events are still happening even during this process.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councillor Vanderheyden.
Yeah, just a bit of a confusion here. Like I trust that the township will do what they need to do moving forward if we put the OP in place today, and that they would do whatever they need to do in order to mitigate some of the issues that Mayor Curtis said, and what the residents were worried about. But the thing that I have a worry about is that we don't have a voice after this is done, because it's all on the municipal township roads. So then what voice do the residents still have after this? And I know that they can appeal and they can, do all of that, but once those appeals come through, and I just feel like we're missing a step here. And that's why I wonder if the change of use, there's a long history there, even though it's non-compliant, and that's through nobody's fault that happened. But this is to fix that. But by fixing this, are we not fixing the problem of the neighbors and the noise and the things that they're dealing with? So how do we move forward? Is a deferral going to really mess with everything? I mean, they're already operating. They're still doing that, and nobody's going to stop that until this. I guess, I don't know. So I guess I'm rambling here, but I'm still confused as to where the rights are of the people that are being affected, and those are the neighbors that live there. And also, I agree with Councillor Warwick. People have been putting a lot of money into this place, but they've also been making money for the last 10 years at a non-compliant facility. So it's kind of complicated and it's kind of mixed up. So I wonder where we go, whether a deferral would be possible for now and not for like 2 years down the road, but for quickly, so that we can fix some of the other issues.
Warden, I'm sorry, Warden, it's Ms. Mullen. I can't put my hand up because I'm not on video.
Yeah, no worries.
If I might respond to some of the issues that have been raised, in particular by the councillor from Adelaide Metcalfe.
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
And what I want to say is that what I heard just now from the councillor from Adelaide Metcalfe in some ways really underscores my client's concern. The township seems to be taking a very hands-off approach here, basically saying we can't do anything. This venue is operating illegally. They have been operating illegally without not being in compliance with zoning, and are continuing to do so even today, even though their zoning bylaw amendment is under appeal and the official plan amendment hasn't been approved. And the township apparently seems unable or unwilling to do anything to stop it, which just confirms why my clients are very concerned about leaving the dealing with the noise issues to be left up to the township to deal with down the road as part of a site plan process or a licensing bylaw, because to date the township hasn't been doing anything. And it's not, I mean, with respect to the councillor from Adelaide Metcalfe, it's not, I don't think that it's the case that the township can't do anything. They have the authority to enforce their existing zoning bylaw, and the fact that they don't do it is a big part of the problem. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Councillor Elliott, I see your hand up.
Yes, through your, the warden, and my question might go to Dirk. I'm just kind of, I feel a little bit confuddled about what's happening here, and just the fact that there is an appeal happening. The business continues to run, even though the concerns keep piling up. It's sitting in front of us for an OP approval. And from your comments before, after Councillor Van Hayden asked regarding the deferral, if we can wait until that zoning appeal is done, that you're saying that LPAT wants to hear all of the decisions before they make their decision. So us deferring it wouldn't necessarily work. It would just expand out the appeal process. And I'm just kind of wondering what our options are here, because I think I'm sitting kind of on the same spot as Councillor Ropp and Warwick and Van Hayden, just kind of comfortable pushing this ahead when there continues to be all of these concerns, but yet kind of what options do we have?
Through the warden, and I guess really council has generally three options when you're dealing with an official plan amendment. I guess technically four. So three. The first is to approve an official plan amendment. The second would be to change it, to modify it in some form. And the way that we practically do that is you usually would, if you wanted to do that, you would refer it to staff to make some change. The third would be to deny or reject the official plan amendment. And the fourth would be to defer it and direct staff to undertake some sort of direct for some further analysis to occur. And council has done that in the past. The only sort of practical caution on that is if you do so, It has been our practice that the county doesn't expend taxpayer dollars, for instance, to do a further noise study and those sort of things. We would require the proponent and possibly the township to do some of that work and then bring it back before county council. So you do have those 4 options. In terms of the appeal, yeah, and maybe just so I can be more clear on that, what the LPAT doesn't want is to hear have a zoning bylaw amendment before it, and then the first day, all the parties would agree it doesn't conform with the official plan. And so therefore they can't really proceed with the zoning bylaw. So they would want all relevant matters, and Wayne would probably have better words than I do on this, all relevant sort of matters at the same hearing. But that doesn't mean that council has to do anything in particular. It's up to council to take the step that they feel appropriate. And then if there are appeals, Wayne and others would deal with those.
And Dirk, you explained that well.
Did you have follow-up?
Can I step in here?
Just one sec, Fred. Did you have follow-up at all, Councillor Elliott, at that? Okay. Before I go to you, Mr. Cahill, I'm going to get one more councillor to speak, and then I'll call on you if that's okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeVete.
Thank you, Warden. This question is for Dirk. Dirk, when the LPAT is meeting and they're deciding about the changes to the official plan, and what weight do they place on the issue of noise? Is their primary goal to understand whether it's an officially sanctioned use? I put that in, like, is their focus on deciding, is the land being properly used versus, I don't know, hygiene matters such as noise and municipal traffic? And to what extent do those variables weigh into their decision? Because if our rule here is now, if we're going to say, wait a minute, we are concerned about residents as we are and how the change in use impacts the lives of people and so forth, then I think we need to be clear, and I'm not clear right now that I understand to what extent some of the other factors that we're focusing on will be worthy of attention when the people around the horseshoe at LPAT are looking at it. Are they going to say, well, we want to do this, and this is a municipal responsibility, i.e. the people in the Adelaide Metcalfe Council are going to have to decide how they do all these other things, or is that moot? Do you understand where I'm going with this? Does that make any sense?
Yes, through the warden, I wouldn't hazard a guess as to what a particular LPAT hearing or member would deal with, but I have read, for example, other LPAT hearings on issues like this, and noise and traffic and those things, those sort of things, operational matters as I would call them, they are subject to the LPAT hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, Fred, did you have something you wanted to add in?
Yes, I just want to reinforce the fact that our business here at the Texas Longhorn Ranch is really based around peace and quiet. It's a retreat for people to get away from the city and experience nature and all those things that go with it, and mental wellness. Yes. So I really think it's just too much of a gamble for us to assume that site plan controls and a noise bylaw are going to fix this noise problem. And I think it's the process should be fix the noise first, then pass the amendment. Then we as neighbors will be able to experience and live in our properties.
Okay, thank you for that statement.
Can you still hear me?
I can. Yep.
I think I thought I was cut off there, but I think I've summed up the situation pretty well. And I am concerned with the corner here, where we have to deal with the traffic too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for those.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for those comments, Fred. Okay. Any other comments or questions or points of discussion from council at this time? Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, I'm still struggling with this as many others are, but the noise one is the one that really gets me. And as Fred just mentioned, I think I would like to see something settled on that first. I mean, I think back to my days as a disc jockey. I was 15 years, my life doing shows all over the place. Things have changed from even then till now. I used to walk in with 200-pound speakers. Now you come in with about a pound of stuff and it plays twice as loud as I did. So who knows? But it's not just even that. There's the after the show's over, people are in the parking lot making a lot of noise. They're happy because it's been a good occasion or a good party gone on. This is what you want. But if I was a neighbor of that, I would struggle with that. I got to tell you. And I know the official plan by itself doesn't bother me, but without that noise study or that noise direction, I guess I have a real problem with it as it is. And I guess that's my biggest problem, Warden.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I guess what I keep hearing is, Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I guess the crux of the problem is how do you remove the speculation that things will be better, and that's very difficult to do. We deal with the mitigation of noise. Every municipality at this table does. We have subdivisions that are located beside railway tracks, and part of the site plan agreement is to develop berms or landscaping or treed lots or wood lots to help mitigate that noise. And how do you take that speculation out instead of going forward? What can be demonstrated that the operator's intentions are serious, that he too realizes that he wants to live in harmony with his neighbors, and what can he do to mitigate that noise? Sound absorption. When I look at the photos of the Sydenham Ridge, I see light being emitted through board and batten structure. So it's not suppressing sound. We have sound absorptions in arenas. We have sound absorptions in halls. We very often have to do remedial work to walls. And if he is intending to live in harmony with his neighbors and be in business, in a viable business model, a demonstration that his intentions are serious before moving forward, or what could be done, what suggestions could planning do to address that noise mitigation, and so that the neighboring properties would have some confidence that the municipality is indeed looking after their interests as well as the venue operator. I think there's technical ways that mayhaps have not have been attempted or discovered in the help of noise mitigation. Okay. And further to Councillor Warwick's comments about porta potties, and at what point does a venue go beyond the use of porta potties? And when I look at that, if you're going to cater to that big of a crowd of 200 people, and have venues of that nature, it's not just whether public washrooms, structured washrooms are required. In the site plan agreement, the location of those public washrooms can be a sound barrier as well. So there's how do you take the speculation out of it? What suggestions can be offered? And should these possessions be implemented prior to an official plan amendment to ensure that these issues will be addressed? Thank you. I think I'm like Councillor Vanderheiden. I'm starting to ramble. I'll cut it off now.
Thank you, Councillor Mayhew, for that. Okay, any other comments or points of discussion? And just make sure I get everybody. Okay. Oh, I see Casey, you've got your hand up one more time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. Just to respond to Councillor Mayhew's comments, as part of our application process, we provided a list of actions that Sydenham Ridge had undertaken in response to the initial noise study to address the noise concerns, and that included the installation of panels and drapes that are designed to absorb and mitigate sounds, as well as putting in place an in-house speaker system with that, so DJs aren't allowed to bring in their own speakers and setups. They have to use the in-house system. The speakers have been positioned and directed to mitigate the noise bouncing around the walls and out of the venue, or to minimize the amount of noise that escapes the venue. Other things included bass inhibitors, installing that to reduce the bass that is escaping the venue. So we did provide the township staff with a list of mitigation measures already taken in place. And then the supplemental noise assessment that was completed last fall further made adjustments to the in-house sound system, which further mitigated noise levels and bass levels emitting from the sound system to, again, reduce those noise levels to background levels when measured at the property line. So we have been taking steps over the number of years to address the ongoing noise concerns. We have provided those measures to township staff as part of this process, and we continue to work with our consultant and township staff to address these noise concerns. We feel that our acoustical engineer has done a really good job at summarizing the work done to date, and that the noise levels, from their professional opinion at this point, have been reduced to provincial acceptable standards at the property line.
Thank you, Casey. Councillor Robb.
Thank you. Through the warden, just one question. I think it's a pretty simple one. Can this be deferred until they address the noise issues to the satisfaction of the neighbors? Or is that putting the cart before the horse that we can't do that? Because it seems to me that we're all talking about the same thing. The noise is the issue, and I know we're hearing from Casey, and that's great that they're working on it. But can we defer the OP, like this zoning, until after that is the noise is worked out and is to satisfaction? That's for Dirk, I would think.
Is that a big question for Dirk? Yeah.
Okay, through the warden. Certainly, County Council is the provincially delegated approval authority for an official plan amendment. And so you have that choice to, as I said, approve, deny, or defer, and direct further analysis to be undertaken. I would probably, and I would want some wording, or would suggest respectfully some wording that it's to the satisfaction of the township, that there's a peer review to the satisfaction of the township, as opposed to the satisfaction of a number of neighbors, and people could have different views and whatnot. So, but yeah, so council, if they chose to, certainly staff would appreciate some specific direction, that, for instance, a traffic study be undertaken or a noise report be undertaken, that it be peer reviewed through the township or by the township, and probably I would respectfully suggest that at least a draft site plan agreement be prepared to sort of tie it together, so that those issues are on a plan, and the engineers can sort of all deal with that. But that really is up to council, of course.
Does that answer your question, Brian, or did you have any follow-up from that?
Yeah, if I may, just a follow-up to that, I would like to see a motion in that respect. I do agree with you, Dirk, that it would go to the satisfaction of the municipality of Adelaide Metcalfe. And I would like to see that. I would make a motion to that effect. The wording being worked on, I think, better than what I'm saying, but I would make that a motion.
So why don't I get Kathy to kind of work on that, because I know I've seen a couple of other hands up, and maybe I'll circle back to that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Councillor Smith and then Councillor DeVete.
Through the warden, also in that motion that Councillor Ropp is looking for, Dirk, would we be able to also include that Adelaide Metcalfe staff also or council approve a licensing bylaw for what am I calling it? Rural event venues? So then we also have that approved. So then County Council can see that we're moving forward with that. Because my fear as a member on County of Adelaide Metcalfe Council is that the recommendation and the process that I see from that table is that it is part of the approved recommendation, but it does not say it specifically has to be done. It is that we're going to be looking into enacting that bylaw, but it doesn't actually specifically say that that bylaw has to be approved and enacted for this.
Okay, I think Kathy's probably putting that down in her notes. Councillor DeVete.
I was going to make the same motion, move it. I think we've discussed it. I was going to echo Councillor Ropp's comments and say we need just to craft the language and make sure that we've got the ticks we want in the right boxes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. One last call for hands up. Just on that, and Dirk did mention it, I think, at one point when he talked about noise studies and if it was to be deferred and if anything was required, how would the costs be determined? Or who, not how would the costs, how would paying for the cost be determined? Should that be included in the motion as well, that the township is responsible for that? Or how does that work, Dirk? Or is that just a given?
It's a given to Dirk, but certainly council could include whatever they wished in the motion. In the past, as I said, it has absolutely been our practice where, I'm trying to think of an example. We had one in Thames Centre a number of years ago where there was a deferral of an official plan amendment for subsequent environmental work, and it was the proponent's requirement. The township did some review, and I believe the township even billed the proponent. So I do believe that that certainly would be my expectation, but you could include that in the motion if you wanted to.
Okay. I guess I would look to Councillor Ropp, since this is going to be his motion, if you would want that included in that.
Yeah, if we think that should be included, let's put it in there so we know exactly who's doing what. Also to Councillor Smith's comments, I'm good with having that. Having his comments added.
Okay. Okay. I'm getting some feedback. Is everyone else getting feedback? I think it might be on the Cahill call. Yeah, and they've just muted themselves.
I just fixed it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Bill. Okay, I think that we've had enough comments and questions at this time. Kathy, have you drafted a motion to speak to what Councillor Ropp was trying to put on the floor?
I have. I'm going to read it out and you can edit if you require it edited. That the Adelaide Metcalfe Official Plan Amendment number 13, Sydenham Ridge File 39 AM OPA 13 be deferred pending a traffic and noise study to be completed by the applicant and be peer reviewed by the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, that a draft site plan agreement be prepared, and that a rural events licensing bylaw also be prepared by Adelaide Metcalfe.
Okay, does that sum it up for you, Councillor Ropp? Okay, so you're moving that, moved by Councillor Ropp. And can I get a seconder for that? Councillor DeVete. I'm gonna write this down. Okay, any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Make sure I've got everybody. Okay, all opposed? Okay, and then that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then. and I know that that will be followed up administratively. Thank you all for joining us and participating in that discussion, and appreciate the input from all parties. Moving on to item number 11B-2, and this has to do with a request that we've received from the City of London. And as everyone knows, that their community housing board was disbanded, and they've gone through a readjustment and reconfiguration of their board, and so they are requesting that there be a representative from County Council on the board. My recommendation is that Councillor Cornelissen take that spot, as he was the original appointee on the board 2 years ago. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder on that request. Councillor Richards and Councillor Mayhew. All opposed? And that's carried. You noticed I did not ask Adrian, so he cannot say no now. So, but I did speak to him before, and he did agree to that appointment. So thank you very much, Adrian, for that. Okay, moving on to the next item, Progressive Discipline Policy, HR Policy 1-09, and this is a report from Jessica. So over to you, Jess.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Warden. Before you today is the county's progressive discipline policy. This policy has been updated and designed to provide a more robust policy by incorporating existing practices that the county currently utilizes when dealing with inappropriate behavior or misconduct. This policy further establishes the roles and responsibilities for employees, managers, and human resources. In the event that an employee violates a county policy or procedure or exhibits problematic behavior, a system of progressive discipline will be utilized. Employees will be provided with 5 opportunities to correct the unwanted behavior, unless the behavior or concern is one of a severe nature in which progressive discipline can be accelerated to match the violation. We recognize that every situation of potential misconduct is unique to the particular circumstances at hand. And as such, the revised policy provides a chart at Appendix A that outlines suggested progressive discipline for common workplace issues. However, consideration will be given to the nature of the incident, factual details, the frequency of offenses, and the employee's overall work record prior to using any progressive discipline. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have relating to the policy.
Okay, thanks for that, Jess. Any questions? Councillor Vanderheyden.
I have no problem with the actual document as presented. I think this is a good way to go, and it just gives everybody opportunity to figure out what's going on and how to move forward. I think that's not a bad thing. Just, and I think I know the answer to this, but this just relates to employees, not council. Council has their own rules and regulations under the Conflict of Interest Act. Is that correct?
Yeah. Thank you. Through you, the warden, to Councillor Vanderheyden. Yes, this only applies to staff. So at this time, the scope of this policy strictly is to county administration, the library, and any contract employees. The Strathmere Lodge does have its own, which we will be bringing shortly to council. We are revising and updating their current informal practice. So it's only for staff.
Follow up.
Just to follow up so that whoever's listening doesn't think we're trying to shirk our responsibilities here. It's just because we're not employees of the county. And that's why I thought I'd throw that out there so we all understand.
And you're governed by the code of conduct for all municipal councillors.
Councillor DeVete, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Warden. Through you to Jessica. I just wanted to ask a quick question about, is this something that will be disseminated to all staff who may have already had their orientations and so forth as a changed document, and or are they already all familiar and it doesn't warrant updating people at staff meetings or something? I'm just wondering about the rollout out of it.
Thank you, through you, the warden, to Councillor DeVete. Yes, this will be sent out to our staff through our new training platform, HR Downloads. So we'll send it out. They'll acknowledge that they've read it, they've received it, and sent it back to us. So this is actually kind of a new policy for our staff. We haven't actually had it in writing, so we will be sending this out, having them sign off and return it.
Any other questions or comments for Jessica? Then there is a motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and seconder on that, please. Councillor Mayhew and Councillor Warwick. All opposed? And that's carried. Correspondence and information items. Strathmere Lodge occupancy and activity report for April 2021. Ministry of Long-Term Care Compliance Inspector Visit. 2021 Ontario Renovates Program. Councillor Vanderheyden.
I looked very carefully over this document, and I think it's great. It's a good opportunity, but I didn't see any dates on there for, is there a deadline for applications? I don't know if anybody else saw that or not. I went through the whole thing, but couldn't find one. Or is that something we need to look at the government for?
Cindy, I don't know whether you had an answer, or I see Bill unmuted himself as well.
Through the warden, I'll start, and then maybe Mr. Rayburn can take over. It's my understanding it's first come, first serve. So if you know anybody that's interested in this program, please encourage them to apply as quickly as they can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thumbs up from Bill. Okay, City of London Housing Stability of All Plan 2020 update and priorities for 2021. Councillor Vanderheyden.
Just a quick question on this one, Madam Mayor, well, you are a Madam Mayor, Madam Warden, and it has to do with the fact that it's the London Housing Stability for All, not the Middlesex London, because that's how the title is, and yet in there, there's a piece that says the Middlesex County update will happen in the future. So I was kind of confused. Is this just the London plan, or is this partly to do with both?
Cindy?
Thanks. Through the warden. In discussions with the City of London as a service manager, they are required to submit the Housing Plan 2020 update and priorities for 2021 to the province by June 30th. The city will attach an update document from the county. However, it is important to note the City of London is the service manager, and the county plan is just a piece of their plan. I'm currently working with Dirk in planning and social services managers to update the Middlesex Homelessness Prevention and Housing Plan 2020 update and priorities for 2021. We will provide an update for council in June, and that will get added to the City of London report. In addition, we are currently working with the City of London to set up a meeting with CHMC to obtain market data that will inform our housing plan and needs. And happy to answer any more questions, and Dirk can jump in too if he chooses.
Okay, thank you for that, Cindy. I don't know whether Dirk, you had anything to add to that. No, good. Okay, did I see any other hands up on that one? Okay. City of London 2020 Ontario Works Participant and Service Delivery Profile. Letter from the Thames Valley District School Board to the Minister of Education with respect to the current proposal for online and remote learning. Middlesex London Board of Health update for April 2021. Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks requesting input to the amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act. Gravel Watch Ontario has submitted comments to the Ontario government, which addresses several issues for communities. Letter from Karen Vecchio, MP, Elgin Middlesex, London, requesting support for the 988 crisis line. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, and sorry, through you, the warden. There is a motion attached to MP Vecchio's letter. And I know just with the work that we've been doing with the Women's Caucus and knowing how important mental health is, especially during the pandemic, I would actually like to put that motion on the floor that we support the 988 crisis line as our MP Vecchio has requested.
Okay, and can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Warwick. And is there discussion, any other further comments on that? Maybe for the purpose of those watching on YouTube, I'll just read it and just so that they are fully aware of what the motion says. So as Kelly said, it's been provided by MP Karen Vecchio, and it reads, whereas the federal government has passed a motion to adopt 988, a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline, and whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%, and whereas existing suicide prevention hotlines require the user to remember a 10-digit number and go through directories or to be placed on hold, and whereas in 2022, the United States will have in place a national 988 crisis hotline, and whereas the municipality of the County of Middlesex recognizes that it is a significant and important initiative to ensure critical barriers, are removed to those in a crisis and seeking help. Therefore, be it resolved that the County of Middlesex endorses this 988 crisis line initiative, and that staff be directed to send a letter indicating such support to the local MP, MPP, Federal Minister of Health, the CRTC, and local area municipalities to indicate our support. And moved by Councillor Elliott and seconded by Councillor Warwick. I'm just going to pull my, okay. All opposed to that? And that's carried. AMO update entitled Stay-at-Home Order Extended, dated May 13th, 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information, please? Councillor Cornelius, a seconder. Councillor Brennan. All opposed? And those are carried. Any inquiries? New business, our next county council meeting is Tuesday, June the 8th. We do need to go into closed session to consider labor relations or employee negotiations. Can I get a mover and seconder to move into closed session? Councillor Richards and a seconder. Councillor Ropp. All opposed? And that's carried, and I'll just wait